Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good.
Hello, Max Freight pilots. Boyland Max 6, CEO Max Freight, Hub Captain Orlando. I'm sitting on the ramp here at Orlando and I want to fly to Huntsville, Alabama. In order to fly to Huntsville, Alabama, I need a flight plan. I can use the flight planner that's available through the simulator. However, as you can see, the flight planner is lacking in many details. It does not tell me how much fuel I need. It will not give me a optimum altitude to fly. However, I have found a freeware program that does exactly that. It offers real world flight plans. It would do fuel calculations as well as some other things. It's called Simbrief. So if you have a few minutes, we'll go over some of the aspects of Simbrief and see what you think. Simbrief can be found by going to www.simbrief.com. However, in order to use Simbrief, you must register with Simbrief. There's a short tutorial on how to do that here. You do it through the help menu. Mainly, you click register and create an account. I won't walk you through all the processes to do that. It's pretty straightforward. Go ahead and register for Simbrief. I will say one word though. They don't send any spam. There's no ad pop-ups. It's just simply a process where you register so they can avoid hackers and spam. I'll see you when you register. Now that you have registered and logged in, you can create a flight plan in Simbrief. We go to Dispatch, Dispatch System, and that opens up the Integrated Dispatch System web page. To create a new flight, we go to Create New Flight, and that opens up the dispatch options. In order to create a flight plan in Simbrief, we need to fill in the flight information block as well as choose an aircraft. We'll choose our airline, which is Max Freight, and if there is a flight number, we will put that flight number in here. In this particular case, there will be because this is a feeder route from Orlando to Huntsville, and I've already pulled it up on the Orlando hub page. It is flight 6202, so we would put 6202 in for the flight number. The departure is KMCO. The arrival is KHSV. And when we do that, it's going to choose an alternate airport. In this particular case, it's chose Atlanta. And we may very well need that today because these little cloud icons is the current weather at these airports. So if I mouse over Huntsville, I can see there's some pretty nasty weather in and around the Huntsville area today. But leave that Atlanta as Atlanta for now. But ATC would divert us if we could not land at Huntsville. We use today's date. You could change that if you were doing one for the future. Depart time is pushback time at the ramp. This is after pre-flight engine start and you're ready to taxi. It's always shown in Zulu in Simbrief. Now, if this were a scheduled flight, we would need to change this to the actual departure time listed in the Max Freight schedules. We choose our aircraft. In this particular case, it's going to be a Boeing 737-700. And when we do that, Simbrief is going to populate the optional entries. These fields are automatically calculated, but they can be overridden. At this particular time, Simbrief is showing in time en route of 2 hours, 0 minutes. It's showing a departure runway at Orlando as being 18 right. The arrival air runway in Huntsville as being 18 right. It's showing the taxi out time in Orlando as 20 minutes. The taxi in time at Huntsville is 8 minutes. We're not going to load any extra fuel. I highly recommend you leave the altitude at automatic because if you do that, then Simbrief is going to calculate the optimum altitude for this particular flight. This thing is set up for actually a commercial airline, and it uses passengers instead of cargo. It really doesn't matter. Weight is weight. If you leave this at auto, then the Simbrief calculates the optimum altitude uh, for us. And this is for additional cargo. If you had additional cargo in the belly, it's always listed in percentages. I never fool with it. Zero fuel weight, I leave it automatic because if I do that auto, then Simbrief will calculate it. The captain is always the name that you gave Simbrief when you created your account, and the pilot ID is the pilot ID assigned by Simbrief. I always change that to my Max call sign. As you can see, Simbrief has created a route based on the information we have provided, the aircraft, flight information, and the optional entries, including those we've added. And it's come up with waypoints CAMDT, VOR, CTY for cross city, and CAPPS for caps. Now we can leave that if we want, if we're happy with that. Or we can choose one of the routes that's suggested by Simbrief. The way Simbrief determines a flight plan is they query FlightAware, they query SkyVector, they query Route Finder, and they also look at their own database to see if someone else has flown this particular route. And those flights are listed over here. I happen to know for a fact that a lot of the heavies, FedEx, UPS, use number 2. All I have to do to change the flight plan is click it and it puts it in the flight planner. I can leave this just as it is and I can analyze the route, and what Simbrief will do is it will analyze that route based on the current IRAC if you have it uploaded. To upload the current IRAC, you will need to have a subscription to Navigraph. If you don't, that's fine. Simbrief will use the latest default, which I think at this particular time is 1503, and that will still allow you to analyze the route. Now these are editable fields, so let's say I put something in here, VTTM, that I think is a waypoint or should be a waypoint in this flight. When I click Analyze Route, I get an error, and it's telling me that the Jetway 151 uses invalid endpoints, which means I cannot depart the CTY VOR and go to a VTTN waypoint and then connect to Jetway 151. So let's take it back out. Now if I analyze the route, it's telling me that my route is valid for IRAC 1707 and the route distance is 496 nautical miles. And below, Simbrief creates a graphical map. If we mouse over the waypoints on this map, it shows us what they are, CAEMDT. And if it's a VOR, it will actually show us the VOR frequency. Very nice stuff. I highly recommend at this point that you save the flight, because once you generate your operations plan, in order to save the flight, you have to go back and edit the flight and save it again. I'm not going to save this flight because I've already saved it. Now we're ready to generate the operations plan for this flight. However, before I generate that operations flight plan, I need to set up how that operations flight plan is going to be generated, and you do that under selections. The operations flight plan layout, it gives you several options. Lido is the default. However, many of the major airlines use their own. For example, there's one for DLH, and several other are listed. I don't think there's one for FedEx or UPS. The closest one we would have for cargo would be the DLH. I always just leave it at Lido for the default. We want to make sure that our units are in pounds and not kilograms because we are a US based carrier. Contingency fuel and reserve fuel, I would leave it automatic, and I'll show you why in a second. The following areas are what you want actually to be shown in your operations flight plan: detailed nav log, ETOPS planning. ETOPS planning comes in play when you're flying overseas for fuel stops. Plan step climbs. I always do that because that way you can go from, say, 15,000 to 21,000, 21,000 to 27, that kind of thing. In other words, it steps you up till you get up to altitude. Runway analysis, I leave unchecked. Runway analysis, some major carriers want that in their operations flight plan. I don't see a need for it. NOTAMs are the NOTAMs for your departure, arrival, alternate airports, as well as any control ATC control areas you're going to be going to. If you click here for the NOTAMs, that's going to give you NOTAMs for every ATC controlled area in the United States. I would leave that alone. And of course, we've talked about the AIRAC cycle in case you need to update it. Now we're ready to generate the op plan. And we do that by clicking here. It's going to ask us if we want to override it, and we say yes. Now Simbrief is generating the briefing package. And this is our operations flight plan. There's the operation flight plan summary based on the information we put in at the flight planner. Airlines Max, flight number 6202. Aircraft is showing as a B737, which is Boeing 737-700. Origin is Orlando. Destination is Huntsville. Alternate is Atlanta. It's showing a cruise speed altitude at flight level 400. That's way too high for this flight, and we will change that when we get in the simulator. Shows the date, shows the departure. Now saying the air time is 1 hour and 25 minutes. This is important here. You need to write this number down, 14,177. This is what Simbrief is saying how much fuel we would need to use on this particular flight. So write it down, 14,177. I'll show you how that plays in later. They said automatic zero fuel weight, and they used a fuel factor of P00 for that calculation. And this is the routing. If there were any dispatcher remarks, they would be right here. And it showed us what AIRAC cycle it used, what the operation flight plan format is, what the units are, and the other factors that's used in this op plan. And there again is our map. And below is what the actual op plan looks like. If you were a pilot for a real world airline and you went to dispatch, this is exactly the dispatch, the paperwork dispatch would hand you. This is very realistic to what you see in the real world. If you want to actually see what it looks like, you can go up here and go print view PDF, and it generates a PDF for it. I warn you, it's 29 pages long. So I used to print them, I don't anymore. If you want to know what each of these areas are in the operation flight plan, Simbrief has a very good help guide, and you can mouse over each of these areas and it tells you what they mean. It's very interesting stuff. What I really like, and to me the heart of why I use Simbrief, is two areas. First, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. VATSIM pre-file. You can file this flight plan on VATSIM by clicking the pre-file button. Simbrief will automatically populate the VATSIM flight plan management software. It will include everything except the VATSIM ID and the password. You would put those in, click File Flight Plan, and it's filed with VATSIM. Awesome stuff. Also, if you click Download FMS or you scroll to the bottom, there's several formats in which you can download this flight plan into. There's FS 2004, FS9, and that one, and FSX and Prepared 3D are probably the most two important areas to us. I'm not going to download it, but if I click the download button, then it would ask me to point to a directory to download it to. If you have not created a flight sim directory on your PC, I highly recommend you do so and download all your flight plans to that particular area. And I'll show you how to find them once we get back in the simulator. One that I really like is down here at the bottom, Sky Vector. If I open here, Simbrief populates that flight plan in Sky Vector for me, and there it is. It's already on an aeronautical chart, in this particular case, World High. I could click either one of these, World Low, en route, whatever, and that flight plan would still show. And it's also showing weather along the way. For example, once I leave Orlando, light, moderate, convective Light, moderate, convective. Uh, Light, moderate, convective. What that's telling us is there's thunderstorms all along this route. The beauty about using Sky Vector also lies in the fact that you can access your charts right here from Sky Vector. You don't have to go to FlightAware. You don't have to go anywhere else. You simply mouse over the airport and then choose whichever one you want. It also includes the SIDS and the stars, and there they are. For example, we can look at the airport diagram. I'd like to expand it up, and there it is. There's the diagram for Orlando. Awesome stuff. Once I do that, I go ahead and close Simbrief. Oops, I closed the wrong one. Once I do that, I go ahead and close Simbrief because I'm pretty much through with it. And I work simply from Sky Vector to access my charts, particularly for my SIDS and my stars. Once that's all done, we're ready to put this in the simulator, and I'll show you how it works. Okay, we've gotten our operation flight plan from dispatch. We've come out to the plane. We've pre-flighted. We have filled out everything. The last thing to do is to load the flight plan, uh, get pushed back in information and taxi information from ATC, and take off. Here's how we do that. We go over to flights, click flights, and then we click flight planner. Once the flight planner dialog box opens up, we click load. Now recall I told you that you create a folder for your flight plans. I think I may have said flight simulator, I meant flight plans. And I have done that. So what I need to do, and you can tell I've got quite a few, but I need to find the Orlando to Huntsville. I've got two in there. So we'll pick the latest one. And there it is. That's probably the one we were working on. And all I do is click open. Now when I do, and then actually this is not the one we did, but I didn't save it, so this is fine. Um, the flight planner populates that flight plan we just uploaded that we had downloaded from Simbrief. That's all we do in the flight planner. We don't click any other button. We just simply leave it alone because the flight plan's in there. All we do is click OK. Now, when we do that, Flight Simulator is going to ask us if we want to move our aircraft to the departure airport listed on the flight plan. If you do that, the simulator is going to move you to runway 36 right at Orlando. That's never good. You always want to depart from the max ramp. So we click no. Now we can see that the flight plan is loaded in the airplane. It's also loaded in the GPS, so we can fly this flight now, but we need to do one other thing before we do that, and this is a fallacy of Flight Simulator. If we flew this plane as it was, we would be flying an empty plane full of fuel. That's not how it works. That's not how it's done. And Max Freight could never make a dime if we flew around empty all the time and burned fuel. So here's where we fix this. We go to Aircraft, Fuel and Payload. Recall I had you write down the block fuel that Simbrief said we would need for this flight. So let's look at it. Let's change fuel. And as you can see, there is 43,822 pounds of fuel loaded on this aircraft. And if we look at our center of balance, this aircraft is what we call tail heavy. What that would mean is if we tried to fly it, it would always be trying to climb, and we would be constantly fighting the joystick or fighting the yoke to keep the nose down. And this is why we're out of balance. So we need 14,177 pounds of fuel. I don't worry about the numbers over here. I just make it simple, and I just go ahead and try some percentages. Let's try 30% in the left tank, 30% in the right tank. Let's try 35% in the center tank. The APU is going to pull fuel from one of these other tanks. It rarely ever is going to pull from your main tank. Let's see where we get here. We're at 14,185. That's close enough. So look now, if you notice, the center of gravity has moved up. The center of balance has moved up for this aircraft. We're getting better. All right, but we still, if you look, there is no payload. In other words, this plane is empty. There has no freight loaded on this aircraft. Well, how much can we put on there? This is what Flight Simulator says is the gross weight for this airplane 154 500,000 pounds. We are currently a gross weight at 100,314. So we've got that much difference that we can play with. I'm not going to worry about the numbers today. I'm going to load 45,000 pounds and let's see where that takes us. Now notice that center balance moved, but we are still not overweight. Our gross has changed to 145,314, so I could probably add another 10,000. I don't know. Let's try 54,000. That may be too much. Like I said, I could do this with a calculator, but I'm not going to. All right, gross weight now is at 154,314, and our max is 154,500. That's pretty good. We're loaded pretty wood. Now, what we like to do is load at 80%. So if I went back and I took this and figured the difference between the max gross weight and the gross weight and come up with a figure and 80% of that, that's what I would choose as my payload. But for demonstration purposes, that's close enough. Now watch what happens when I click the OK button. If you could see that plane actually moved. In other words, it adjusted based on the new fuel and weight calculations we gave it. A lot of times that's why your aircraft are not handling properly. You are not configured properly for takeoff. Your center bounces are way off, and most of the time we're landing too heavy. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you like it, please say so in the forums. If we get positive response, we'll probably try to do some more. If you don't like it, say so. I can't apologize for my southern accent. Anyway, thank you for being part of Max. John Butler and I have been really proud to become a part of the Max staff, and it's all about you. We exist solely because you exist, and we appreciate every effort that Max. If you have any feedback, any comments, please use the forums and let us know.